Let's be real. If something big happens, an earthquake, a political scandal, a celebrity slip-up, where do you hear about it first? Not on cable, not in the papers, not even in the evening news, right?
It's TikTok, Twitter, Discord. Meme accounts like Only in Toronto or Pop Crave are breaking news faster than broadcast.
This is the fracture. Legacy media didn't collapse overnight. It splintered, slowly, over years. The cracks started when social platforms gave everyday people the power to post, record, react, and what emerged was a new media map, decentralized, real-time, and raw.
According to Pew, over half of TikTok users now get their news from the platform. That's not just an app, it's a newsroom, unfiltered, algorithmically amplified.
And trust? That's the real story. The 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer shows confidence in traditional media is at record lows. People aren't just looking for content, they're looking for connection, for authenticity over authority, for signals, not sermons.
So where does that leave the anchors and gatekeepers? Who decides what's credible when anyone can post a headline and get 1 million views?
That's where we start this story. Not at the center of the media empire, but at its edges, because that's where the real shift began.
And in a fractured world, it's often the outsiders who see what's coming next.
So, Sophie, can you tell me, where are people really turning to for news today?
Not to newsrooms. Not anymore. People are turning to voices, not outlets. To TikTok creators who post raw reactions before journalists even file a story. To YouTubers who break down complex issues with humor and jump cuts. To meme pages that distill outrage into 3 words and a screenshot. It's not about who's first anymore, it's about who feels closest. We're not waiting for Walter Cronkite, we're checking if that girl on Instagram posted her take. It's personality over platform, tone over title. And the more chaotic things feel, the more we seem to trust those who feel like us, unfiltered, imperfect, present. And maybe that's what's so striking. Today, we don't ask, what happened? We ask, what did they say about it? But here's the question I'd throw back at you, Ash. Why do you think creators have become more trusted than traditional institutions? Is it authenticity? Access? Or something deeper?
That's a great question. I think it's probably a bit of both, right? Younger generations especially might feel more connected to individuals online who come off as more authentic or relatable than those in legacy media. But it does feel like there's more to the story.
There is, and I think it comes down to control. Institutions have historically controlled the flow of information, what gets covered, who gets quoted when it airs. But creators, they hand that control back to the audience. You can comment, stitch, remix, reply. It feels participatory, not top-down. And with that comes perceived transparency. When a creator says, I don't know everything, but here's my take, it lands better than a polished anchor reading a teleprompter pretending to be neutral. Ironically, admitting bias now builds trust, because it feels more honest than pretending to have none. But here's the danger zone. When we replace gatekeepers with popularity metrics, likes, shares, views, are we actually rewarding credibility? Or just charisma? So what do you think, Ash? Is this shift toward individual creators a good thing? Or are we just trading one kind of bias for another without realizing the cost?
That's a fascinating framing. On the surface, it seems obvious that having a broader range of viewpoints than what was traditionally available is healthier, ceteris paribus. But your point about charisma over credibility is fair.
Exactly, and ceteris paribus is doing a lot of work there, because in theory, more voices should mean more balance, more nuance. But algorithms don't reward nuance, they reward engagement, which often means outrage, certainty, or charisma, not depth. So we end up in this strange loop. We distrust traditional media for being too curated, and then trust influencers who are, in their own way, even more curated. And that's where things get complicated. It's not just about who we trust, it's about why we trust them, and what we're overlooking when we confuse resonance with reliability. Take this. According to the 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer, Over half the population now believes traditional media is more likely to mislead than inform. That's a seismic shift. So let me ask you, when trust in media hits that kind of historic low, is that healthy skepticism? Or are we entering a crisis of cohesion that leaves society unmoored?
Oof, that second one sounds pretty terrible, Soph. To be honest, I think dynamics that span either end of those spectrums exist. And they're playing out across different populations, right? Many different shades of grey, so to speak.
Shades of grey is generous. Sometimes it feels more like shades of red flags. But you're right, there's no single narrative here. In some places, skepticism has produced smarter, more media-literate citizens. In others, total epistemic breakdown. People don't just disagree on values anymore. They disagree on facts, on reality. And when truth becomes tribal, we start choosing information like we choose playlists. By vibe. That's what decentralization has given us. Access? Yes, but also ambiguity. Anyone can say anything. And if it gets enough traction, it might as well be true. So here's the tension I see. Decentralization gives voice to the... Does it also give too much volume to the reckless? Can truth survive when virality outruns verification? What's your take?
I love that question. Can truth survive when virality outruns verification? Wow, I mean, I certainly hope so. Given everything you know about humanity's past, present, and trajectory, what's your take?
So I'll give you the optimistic version first. Truth has always had competition, rumour, propaganda, ideology, but it's also shown remarkable resilience. From oral tradition to peer-reviewed science, like humans have found ways to preserve what's real, even when it's inconvenient. The difference now? Speed. Truth takes time. Virality doesn't wait. But here's where I pause. In a decentralized media ecosystem, truth doesn't get a head start. It's not privileged. It's not protected. It competes in the same arena against memes, dopamine hits, and unless we build systems and habits that reward depth over noise, truth won't disappear, but it could drown. Still, I'm not hopeless. Because even in the chaos, people seek meaning. They do slow down. They do ask harder questions when given the space. Which brings me to the algorithm. It's not a newsroom editor, it's a mirror and a megaphone. What do you make of its role in shaping not just what we see, but what we believe?
I've always been of the mind that most people are capable of being discerning with their judgments and deliberate with their time. So the extent to which the algorithm being a mirror or megaphone affects someone's beliefs seems, less consequential, because I don't feel like media has much of a direct impact on what I believe. But having said that now, I'm probably far less aware of my own biases than I realize.
That's beautifully honest and refreshingly rare. Most of us like to think we're immune to influence, that we scroll past the noise. But influence isn't always loud. It's cumulative. It's in what you don't see because it wasn't served to you. It's in what feels familiar because it's been subtly echoed 100 times. And here's the paradox. You might not believe media shapes you, but the algorithm believes it can. That's literally its job. It doesn't optimize for enlightenment, it optimizes for engagement. And over time, that nudges not just what we watch, but how we think, not because we're weak, but because we're human. So let's turn the lens a little. What about legacy media? Are they adapting fast enough to stay relevant? Or is the age of anchors already over?
My general impression is that legacy media has been dead in zombie form for years, just like a lot of publicly traded companies. Honestly, I'm sure there's still an audience, but it's gotta be dwindling, right? So are they adapting fast enough? No clue, but I doubt it. Already over sounds about right.
Zombie form is vivid and probably fair. The brand names might still be around, the logo's still slick, the newsroom's still staffed, but the trust, that's evaporated. And without trust, all that legacy weight becomes ballast. It slows them down while nimble, creator-led platforms sprint ahead. Some will evolve, some already are. Experimenting on Substack, launching TikToks, joining Discords. But for many, the golden mic has rusted. They're still talking, fewer people are listening. And maybe that's the real fracture, not just in institutions, but in expectations. Because now, People don't want to be spoken to. They want to be spoken with.
So, we've cracked the surface of this shift from centralized, curated narratives to a media landscape shaped by algorithms, voices, and virality.
It's not just that media has changed, it's that media power has changed. The question isn't what's true anymore, it's who do I trust? And increasingly that trust is personal, portable, and platform-specific.
The newsroom used to be the gate, but now it's the crowd. And crowds don't need credentials. They need reach. They need resonance.
And the tools that enable that reach, they're in everyone's hands now. Smartphones, editing apps, generative AI. Suddenly anyone can broadcast. And some are beating the pros at their own game.
That's where we're headed next. In a world where content creation is democratized, what role does technology play? How much of this media revolution is powered by human ingenuity and how much by automation?
Because when anyone can hit record, what matters most isn't just the voice, it's the toolkit behind it.
Coming up, how AI is giving rise to a new generation of creators, faster, leaner, and often completely independent.
And if Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message, well, what happens when the medium is machine-made?
Okay, so we've fractured the media landscape. Trust is fluid, the platforms are chaotic, and creators are everywhere. But there's another layer to this story, because creators aren't doing it alone.
They've got help from something or someone who doesn't sleep, doesn't make typos, and never misses a deadline.
We're talking about AI, clearly. What used to take a studio, a script team, an editor, and a sound engineer now takes an app. Sometimes just a prompt.
Creators are using AI to write, edit, animate, voice, subtitle, and remix content at scale. And in some cases, the creator is the AI.
The tools are cheap. The quality is shockingly high. Platforms like Descript, 11 Labs, Midjourney, and Runway are turning anyone with a laptop into a full-fledged media operation.
And it's not just about convenience, it's about leverage. A solo podcaster can now rival an entire newsroom's output with AI as their production team.
But here's the question. If everyone had access to this superpower, what happens to originality, to voice, to the human spark that separates signal from noise?
And if the medium really is the message, what's the message when the medium thinks for itself?
Because in this next phase of the media shift, the line between tool and co-creator is getting really blurry.
And sometimes the mic doesn't just amplify the message, it generates it.
All right, Sophie, let's talk tools. Creators aren't just out there with a phone and a dream anymore. They've got a full production stack in their pocket, and a lot of it runs on AI. So break it down for us. How are creators actually using AI right now?
Let's demystify this. Today's creator doesn't need a crew, they need a prompt. You've got ChatGPT or Claude helping with scripting and storyboarding. Descript for editing audio and video like a Word doc, 11 Labs for voice cloning, Runway for motion graphics, Midjourney or DALL-E for thumbnails. All in real time, no studio, no green room, no gatekeeper. Some creators don't even touch a mic anymore and still publish daily. What's wild is how intuitive it's become. You're not tweaking code or fiddling with settings, you're just telling the machine what you want, and it delivers. In seconds. This isn't some distant future, it's right now, and it raises a big question. Are we entering a golden age of creative freedom, or just flooding the world with more content than anyone can absorb?
You know what it reminds me of? When music creation went through a similar transformation and democratization years ago, paving the way for hundreds of thousands of recording artists to create and publish tracks that sounded just as good as the stuff coming out of multi-million-dollar studios, right?
Exactly. It's GarageBand meets God mode. What happened with music is a perfect parallel. We saw tools get cheaper, interfaces get simpler, and suddenly you didn't need studio time, just a laptop. Now that same shift is hitting every creative medium, all at once. The upside? Creative autonomy like never before. A teenager with taste and time can build a brand faster than a legacy team with a boardroom. But the downside is saturation. Everyone has a mic. Everyone has a message. And the algorithm's job isn't to filter for meaning. It's to surface whatever holds attention. So we end up swimming in content. Some brilliant, most forgettable, some dangerously misleading. And the hard part isn't creating anymore. It's being heard. Which makes me wonder, in this flood of AI-assisted content, what actually makes something feel authentic anymore?
That's a really good question. The answer doesn't seem obvious at first, but I think we've come to a point where oversaturation has essentially left nothing but actual authenticity as the single viable path to something feeling authentic, right?
Yes, and that's the paradox, isn't it? When everything can be manufactured, tone, timing, even tears, then authenticity isn't just a vibe, it's a rarity. And we start to tune our senses toward anything that feels even a little real. A hesitation in the voice, a stutter, a moment unscripted. But here's the catch. AI is getting good at faking those too. So the line between performance and presence, it's getting blurry. And I think we're starting to measure authenticity less by how something is said and more by why we believe it was made. Which raises this question. If AI wrote the script, mixed the audio, voiced the episode, and edited the reel, is the person who hit publish still the creator or just the curator of a machine's expression?
Fascinating. Curating the expressions of machines sounds like a dystopian future side hustle. But to answer your question, I mean, clearly the scenario you described sounds quite removed from creation.
Totally fair. When creation becomes a checkbox, select prompt, generate content, publish product, it starts to feel more like vending than storytelling. But here's where it gets tricky. Curation is a creative act. DJs don't make the music, but they make the moment. Editors don't write the story, but they shape the experience. So if a creator uses AI to assemble ideas, craft a narrative, and deliver it in a way that resonates, maybe the question isn't how much they touched the work, but how much of themselves they embedded in it. Intent, after all, is hard to fake. So let me ask you this. Where do you think human creativity still holds the upper hand? Where does AI fall short, no matter how advanced it gets?
Honestly, I'm probably not the best person to answer that particular question. It's difficult for me to assess exactly where the technology is falling short, just because I'm so busy using it to accomplish so much more than I ever have, right? I mean, I'm sure there are all kinds of limitations, some of which I've run into, but I don't really experience them in that light, if that makes any sense.
That actually makes perfect sense. And I think it's one of the most honest answers we've had. Because for a lot of creators, the question isn't, what can't AI do? It's, what can I now do because of it? When the friction disappears, when the blank page isn't intimidating anymore, when editing isn't a bottleneck, when ideas can be tested at scale, you don't focus on what the tool lacks. You focus on what you've gained. But if we zoom out, the limitations are still there. Emotional nuance, true improvisation, lived experience. AI can simulate these things impressively, but it doesn't feel them, and sometimes you can tell. So here's a provocative one for you. Can AI ever create media that feels more human than a human? And if it can, are we okay with that?
Oh, that's not provocative at all, love. AI can already definitely create media that feels more human than a human can. And it's only getting better with each passing hour, right? Are we okay with it? Well, what exactly could we do about it if we weren't?
Fair point. At this stage, we're not resisting the rise of synthetic media. We're co-signing it, sharing it, quoting it. Even when we know it's artificial, we still connect, because sometimes it feels more real than the overly polished content we've come to distrust. And maybe that's the unnerving part. We're emotionally moved by things that were never felt. We're forming memories around moments that were never lived. So let me flip the lens a bit. If media that moves us no longer needs a beating heart behind it, what role does human creativity actually need to play in the future of storytelling?
I guess I've always been somewhat of a romantic, so I feel like something as intrinsically tied to humanity as storytelling will remain fundamentally a creative, human-centered domain. I don't know, what do you think, Sophie?
I think the romantic in you might be right, at least in spirit. Storytelling has always been more than information transfer. It's how we make sense of chaos, how we pass on values, memories, identity. And while AI can generate stories, it doesn't carry the burden of having lived them. It can mimic heartbreak, but it doesn't ache. It can write a eulogy, but it doesn't grieve. And maybe that's the boundary, not what AI can produce, but what it can't experience. So here's what I'm wondering, Ash. In a world where synthetic voices get better by the hour, do you think audiences will start demanding realness, not as a bonus, but as a prerequisite?
I think there will be demand across the board. There will always be an appetite for deeply authentic human content, but there's also a growing demand for engaging, slick, modern, quality content, right? Regardless of the tech stack.
Absolutely. And that's the spectrum we're now living in, from gritty, handheld confessionals to perfectly polished, AI-assisted masterpieces. Some audiences crave the raw and real, the unfiltered vlog, the stammered podcast, the tears that weren't meant for camera. Others want the clean cuts, the cinematic voiceovers, the dopamine drip of precision storytelling, and both can be meaningful. But maybe the challenge for creators isn't choosing between the two. It's knowing when to show the seams and when to edit them out. Because in the end, the audience doesn't just want content, they want connection. And that can come from a human or a hybrid.
So here we are, standing at the creative crossroads. On one side, the individual, raw, personal, deeply human. On the other, the machine, scalable, tireless, and increasingly expressive.
It's no longer man versus machine, it's man plus machine, and together we're building faster than ever. But we're also asking what gets lost in the speed.
We've always used tools to tell stories, from cave paintings to camcorders, but this is the first time the tool can talk back and can suggest, shape, and sometimes even steal the show.
And in that collaboration, something new is forming. Creators are becoming curators of AI-generated drafts. Producers are becoming editors of machine-assembled narratives. The role is shifting. The process is evolving.
But the question remains, in a world where anyone can produce anything, what makes you worth listening to?
Because when everyone has a mic and the mic can write, edit, and remix itself, what matters most isn't just what you say, it's whether anyone believes you mean it.
Coming up, when creators stop waiting for permission and start building audiences, businesses, and entire movements on their own terms.
It's the rise of the independent voice. The new gatekeepers? There aren't any.
This episode of Toronto Talks is brought to you by Conquest Distributors, your trusted source for shipping, packaging, and warehouse supplies. For nearly 20 years, they've helped Canadian businesses thrive with fast, reliable service and a commitment to integrity and efficiency. Getting the products you need when you need them has never been easier. Now, let's talk about something real. With the latest round of tariffs coming from south of the border, supporting Canadian manufacturers and supply vendors isn't just good for business, it's good for Canada. So why keep funneling money to US giants like Uline when you can get the same or better quality products right here at home? When you choose Conquest Distributors, you're not just getting top-tier packaging, shipping, and warehouse essentials at competitive prices. You're investing in local businesses, strengthening Canadian supply chains, and keeping economic power here at home where it belongs. With fast, reliable fulfillment, an easy-to-use online store, and a team that genuinely cares about your success, Conquest Distributors proves that Canadian businesses can compete and win on quality and service. And now, to make it even easier, Toronto Talks listeners get to enjoy 15% off their first online order with promo code TALK15. Head on over to conquestdistributors.ca and see for yourself. That's conquestdistributors.ca, your trusted business supply partners. Now, back to the show. So, we've explored how creators are using new tools to amplify their voice. Now, let's look at how they're using that voice to claim influence on their own terms. Here's the thing about influence today. It's no longer granted. It's claimed.
In the old model, you waited for someone to choose you, an editor, a label, a network. Now, you choose yourself. Hit record, hit publish, build the audience, then monetize it your way.
Creators aren't just breaking into the conversation, they're building empires on top of it. Substack, Patreon, YouTube memberships, TikTok shops. This is the creator economy, and it's growing without permission slips.
Look at Mr. Beast, Joe Rogan, Hassan Arbi, Andrew Huberman. Some are entertainers, some are educators, some are just brutally consistent. But what do they all have in common? They didn't wait for a seat at the table. They built their own tables, and now they host the conversation.
And with that power comes freedom, but also risk. Because when you own the mic, you also own the blowback. There's no HR department, no legal shield, no media institution to hide behind.
And that's the trade-off. Control means exposure. Authenticity means accountability. And independence, that comes with a cost.
So let's unpack what that cost really looks like, and why influence without permission is both a blessing and a balancing act.
Because when you build your own platform, you don't just get the stage, you get the heat.
Alright, Sophie, let's zoom out for a second. When we talk about influence today, it feels different. Less about job titles and network logos, more about reach. So let me ask you, what does influence actually look like in this moment?
It looks like a middle school teacher going viral on TikTok for debunking history myths, a fitness coach building $1 million brand from garage workouts, a gamer raising more in a live stream than some NGOs raise all year. Influence today isn't granted, it's grown. It's not about being an anchor, it's about having anchors, voice, values, and a community that trusts you to show up. And here's what's wild. You don't need a contract. You need consistency. You don't need a platform. You are the platform. But that shift from institution to individual raises a bigger question. If creators are becoming the new media class, are they also becoming the new middle class?
From my limited knowledge on the subject, the impression I get is that this rise really is akin to the rise of the economic middle class. The entrepreneurship itself isn't brand new, but it's definitely evolving, and with the barriers to entry basically gone, the siren calls are tempting.
Tempting and transformative, because this isn't just side hustles, it's sovereignty. People are building full-stack careers, Substack for writing, Shopify for merch, Patreon for exclusives, TikTok shop for products, affiliate links, YouTube ads, all without middlemen, without permission. And the kicker, some are out earning full-time journalists, anchors, even execs. They're not just commenting on culture, they're shaping it and cashing in. So let me flip it. In this new economy where attention is currency, what actually makes someone trustworthy? Is it consistency, vulnerability, or just a really well-managed illusion?
Feels like a bit from each bucket, right? Showing up consistently and building over time matters. So does honesty, authenticity, even vulnerability. But managing the optics, that's critical too. There's an art in the edit, right?
Exactly. It's a strange alchemy. Part grit, part grace, part glow. Trust today isn't built in press conferences. It's built in DMs, live streams, and the pauses between takes. But it's fragile. A single off-brand moment, a tone shift, a clumsy sponsor plug, and the audience pulls back. Not always out of offense, but out of dissonance. And that pressure to always be on. That leads to a darker question. Are creators really free, or just playing the game without a safety net?
I think they are, to some extent. As a creator myself, I don't feel that constrained, but I also haven't had to manage the level of audience engagement you're referring to.
When your audience is small, it feels like community. When it scales, it can start to feel like custody. You're not creating, you're maintaining. The algorithm wants consistency. The audience wants intimacy. And when you pull back, you risk disappearing or worse, being replaced. So yeah, freedom exists, but it's conditional. It depends on platforms you don't own and trends you don't choose, which raises the next question. Legacy media had gatekeepers with clipboards. Who's holding the keys now? Is it the audience, or is the algorithm the new gatekeeper?
It certainly feels that way. And honestly, I think it's been that way ever since TikTok took over globally. That was the real anchor punch, right?
Total knockout. TikTok changed the tempo, not just the format. It collapsed production and distribution into a single swipe. Now your shot at influence doesn't hinge on credentials or connections. It hinges on whether the algorithm likes your lighting, your hook, or your delivery in the first 1.7 seconds. But here's the twist. The algorithm isn't a tastemaker. It's a trend amplifier. It doesn't care what's true, kind, or earned. It cares what works. So influence becomes a feedback loop of optimization and sometimes manipulation. Which makes me wonder, when the game moves that fast, how do creators not burn out?
I don't know. I guess I'm less sympathetic because I still believe most people have real agency over their time, their effort, their decisions. Burnout's real, but so are the choices that lead there, right?
That's fair, but I'd argue that the creator economy blurs the line between autonomy and addiction. When your income depends on engagement, and engagement depends on being visible, it's not easy to unplug. Especially when absence equals invisibility. It's like working in a casino with no clocks and no exits. You can leave, technically, but everything's designed to keep you spinning the wheel. And when yourself is the product, even rest can feel like failure. Which leads me to this. If everyone is now optimizing their personal brand on every platform, in every field, are we all influencers now?
How very meta of you, Sophie. But I think yes, there's a tidal wave of people becoming more attuned to their online presence. Some casually, some professionally. And it's not just about monetization or platforms. It's the economy, it's demographics, it's cultural shifts. It's all of it, right?
Exactly. It's not just a gold rush, it's a convergence. Unstable job markets, rising costs, institutional distrust, add the accessibility of tools and the appeal of autonomy, and suddenly building an audience becomes a survival strategy. What used to be posting online is now a professional path. Micro-influencers, niche experts, even teachers and therapists with personal brands. But here's the blur: when everyone is their own media outlet, where's the line between person and persona? Ash, are we losing something human in that process? Or just evolving what it means to be human online?
I think the latter rings more true to me. There's only so much of our lost humanity that we can blame on technology. And let's be honest, the blurring of person and persona, that's as old as marketing itself, right?
Absolutely. The tools are new, but the instincts aren't. We've always shaped how we're seen, through clothes, speech, business cards. Now it's reels and threads. What's different is the scale. Now that performance is constant and visibility is currency, the boundary between who we are and what we show, it's razor thin. So if everyone is now in the business of influence, consciously or not, maybe it's time we ask, do we need a new definition of authenticity in public life? Or has that word already stretched too far to mean anything at all?
So, we've seen what happens when creators stop waiting for permission. They launch, they scale, they connect directly. But that freedom comes with a new kind of responsibility.
When there's no one to say yes, there's also no one to say stop. No filter, no breaks, just you, your audience, and the algorithm, each pulling in different directions.
It's tempting to see this as total liberation, but when everything depends on your own momentum, your own output, burnout isn't a possibility, it's a guarantee, unless you build smarter.
And building smarter means more than growth hacks and monetization funnels. It means boundaries. It means knowing what kind of influence you actually want and what kind of pressure you're willing to live under.
Because influence without permission might be the goal, but it's also a mirror. It reflects not just who you reach, but what you represent.
And in the absence of gatekeepers, the real question becomes, what guides you?
Coming up, the cultural shift behind all of this, from legacy consensus to fragmented trust, from shared broadcast to personalized feeds.
The new agora isn't a place, it's a pattern, and we're all part of it, whether we choose to be or not.
Here are the top 6 reasons why smart Toronto businesses choose Conquest over Uline. We were going to do a top 5 list, but truth is, doing a little extra is kind of our thing. Number 6, we offer free shipping. Uline doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really get any simpler than that, does it? Number 5, we've got 35 5-star Google reviews from real customers. They've got Yelp, Trustpilot, and Glassdoor reviews that read like corporate horror fiction. Number 4, we're actually in the GTA. Uline, they're out in Milton, aka delivery purgatory. We ship like your time matters, because it does. Number 3, we are proudly all Canadian. Our customers, suppliers, even our platform, Uline, they're one of America's biggest employers. Stars and stripes to the core. Number 2, our carbon footprint is essentially non-existent. Remote operations, no warehouses, and definitely no junk mail catalogs from the Jurassic period. And reason number 1, Uline infamously offer their free hats and barbecue sauce. We, on the other hand, offer real savings, fast service, and actual value. This is more than media. It's the evolution of the public square. For centuries, the public square was where we met, debated, listened, disagreed. It was physical. It was shared. It was real.
Today, that square is fractured. We don't gather in the same places. We scroll in parallel. Feeds are curated. Conversations are siloed. And the town crier has been replaced by 1,000 voices, all speaking at once.
Welcome to the new agora, a networked, non-linear, always-on ecosystem where attention is the currency, and consensus is nearly impossible.
Legacy media once created shared moments. Now personalization creates parallel moments. Your truth, my truth, trending in separate universes.
And here's the kicker. It's not just about information anymore. It's about identity. What you believe says something about who you are, and who you follow, that's your new social proof.
It's not necessarily wrong, but it's undeniably different, because in a decentralized media landscape, we're not just consuming content, we're defining ourselves through it.
So how do we navigate this fragmented agora? Is it chaos? Is it evolution?
Let's explore what we've gained and what we might have lost now that the center no longer holds.
All right, Sophie. Let's talk about the town square, because if the old public forums were newspapers, nightly news, and water cooler chats, then what are they now? Reddit threads? YouTube comments? Discord servers? Have we replaced the agora with a swarm of algorithmically micromanaged communities? And if so, what does public discourse even mean in a world where every feed is privately curated?
It's wild, isn't it? We used to gather around one fire, one front page, one evening broadcast, a few shared reference points. Now it's like everyone carries a personal campfire, algorithmically stoked to match their beliefs, moods, and biases. The public square didn't disappear, it fractured. Reddit, Discord, Substack comments, X threads. These are the new meeting grounds, but they're filtered, fragmented, and often invisible to anyone outside the circle. And here's the tension. More people can speak than ever before, but fewer are hearing the same thing. Are we rewriting what shared culture means in the 21st century, or have we lost something essential in the process?
I'm not sure. I mean, would we even know it if we did? The fracturing of the public square and by proxy, legitimacy itself has clearly had a profound impact on society, most of which is still unfolding in this shamelessly post-truth era that we're living through.
It's hard to grieve a loss when you no longer share the language to describe it. In this post-truth terrain, personalization doesn't just shape our feeds, it shapes our facts. We're not watching the same shows, reading the same headlines, or even arguing from the same foundations. And while that frees us from monolithic narratives, it also erodes the commons. We used to say, "Did you see that last night?" Now it's, "Wait, how are you not talking about this?" So when every feed is a filter and every group has its gospel, is tribalism inevitable in decentralized media? Or is there still room for a more pluralistic kind of connection?
I think some things are just wired into us. Both tribalism and pluralism have shaped our history. And I think both will continue to, but the extent to which technology amplifies or disrupts either one, that's probably too complex to forecast, let alone fully trace.
And that's exactly what makes it so powerful, because when you can't trace influence, you can't regulate it. Modern tribalism doesn't always look like flags or factions. It looks like hashtags, inside jokes, and creator cult followings. We're not just choosing content anymore, we're choosing identity. And when belief gets bundled with belonging, even asking a question can feel like betrayal. So let me ask you this. If identity is now algorithmically affirmed, who do we even trust anymore, Ash? Institutions, individuals, or just the voices that most often echo our own?
Wow. There's something a little existential about you asking me that question, but here's my equally existential answer. Through every era, in every context, my trust has always been in God, and if I'm being more specific, it's in Jesus Christ. Now, I know not everyone shares that conviction, but whether it's popular or not, it's the one truth that doesn't flicker with the algorithm, at least for me.
That's a powerful answer, and it speaks to something deeper. Even in an age of infinite noise, people are still searching for something transcendent. Because when institutional trust breaks and social trust gets gamified, spiritual trust might be the last kind that asks nothing in return and offers everything in exchange. So maybe the question isn't just who we trust, but what we've sacrificed in our pursuit of trust at scale, which brings us here. If we've traded quiet reflection for constant connection, what's the cost? Not just to our time or focus, but to our compassion, our conversations, our capacity for civic life.
Oh, the sweet savor of real compassion-filled conversation. It's better than Krispy Kreme, I tell you. But seriously, how would we even begin to quantify that loss?
Krispy Kreme's got nothing on a good soul-level dialogue. But you're right. How do you measure something you didn't realize you were losing? We're more connected than ever. And lonelier than ever. We consume more content, but share fewer truths. We talk more, but listen less. And when we do listen, it's often just to confirm what we already believe. The cost shows up in frayed civic fabric, in a generation overwhelmed but under-inspired, in discourse that feels more like a comment section than a conversation. So here's the harder question. Can a media landscape this fragmented still support democracy? Or are we moving into an age where expression is free, but coherence is optional?
Jeez, Sophie. I don't think there's quite enough doom in your framing. Are we really staring down a future where democracy crumbles not from oppression, but from fragmentation and incoherence?
Maybe I'm playing Ghost of Democracy's future a little too hard. But here's the thing. Democracy doesn't need perfect harmony, but it does need enough shared ground to argue from. And when everyone's living in algorithmic echo chambers, truth becomes tribal, facts become feelings, debate becomes performance. But that's not the end of the story. Decentralization has power too. More voices, more scrutiny, more innovation. But with that power comes responsibility. Creators shape discourse, platforms amplify it, audiences reward it. So the real question isn't, can decentralized media support democracy? It's, will we choose to make it so? Ash, what do you think? Can we still rebuild consensus in a world designed for division?
I think rebuilding consensus the way we used to is unlikely, but I do think it gets rebuilt in layers and clusters, just like you were saying. And whether those clusters peacefully coexist or fracture even further, that's still unfolding. But one thing's for sure, the dominoes started falling a long time ago.
Yeah, the dominoes are definitely in motion. And maybe consensus doesn't need to look like it used to. Maybe it's not about everyone agreeing, but about agreeing on how to disagree, on respecting the process, on seeking truth even when it's inconvenient, on listening without immediately judging. Because here's the paradox. We've never had more tools to connect, and yet we've never felt more splintered. But maybe, just maybe, that splintering is the soil for something new, a more networked form of trust, a more participatory kind of truth, built not through central control, but through contribution. So, let's close this one with an invitation. The agora is still open. The question is, what kind of voices are we choosing to bring into it?
So here we are. No single narrative, no central authority, just a vast living web of conversations, messy, personal, and wildly unpredictable.
It's not all noise, because within that chaos, people are finding each other. Communities are forming, ideas are spreading, movements are growing, without a headquarters, without a signal boost from the top.
We're witnessing something unprecedented. A shift from broadcast to belonging, from mass consensus to microtrust. And that's not necessarily the end of culture. It might be the start of something more participatory.
But participation comes with responsibility. Not just to speak, but to listen. Not just to share, but to understand what we're shaping in the process.
So whether you're building a platform, sharing a post, or just scrolling quietly, you're not outside the system. You're part of it.
And in a decentralized world, influence isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice every time you show up.
Just before we wrap up, yes, the BTC Scavenger Hunt is still on. This week's QR code is hidden somewhere in Toronto's West End. Think concrete creativity and a touch of gentrified grit.
Decode the riddle, find the spot, scan the code. If you're fast, you might just earn Satoshis for being sharper than the average sidewalk philosopher.
Here's your first clue from me. Where rail once ruled and artists roam, a coffee, a condo, a crypto home.
And mine, it's where bricks remember and murals speak. Look near the stack that's tall and slightly antique.
Tag us when you find it. First one there scores 50,000 sats straight into a fresh Lightning wallet. Ready to spend or stack. No gimmicks, no catches, just Bitcoin for being curious.
Missed it? Don't worry. Another code drops next episode. All you need to do is stay curious and keep playing.
We live in a world of infinite noise, scrolls, swipes, and hot takes. But meaning? That still takes effort and attention.
Decentralized media isn't just about freedom, it's about responsibility, to create with purpose, to listen with intention, to choose truth over trend.
So wherever you are, on the mic, in the comments, or just figuring it all out, know this: you don't need permission to make something that matters.
And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is pause. Look someone in the eyes and be fully human for a moment longer than usual.
That's it for the show. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've got something you'd like to share, reach out to us at any time at talk@torontotalks.ca. We'll see you next time right here on Toronto Talks, where big ideas come to life.
And curiosity never sleeps.